Welcome everyone back. We come to the final phase of this Sustainable Destinations Summit with a roundtable that will help us to synthesize some of the key aspects that have been analyzed here. So now let's talk about the future. Destinations face grand challenges that involve valuable opportunities to consolidate an industry capable of promoting a fairer and more prosperous community. Destinations want to be ready to ensure the satisfaction of visitors with a sustainable, safe, and quality experience. The development of initiatives that lead to the consolidation of sustainable destinations requires a common agenda. It also requires the coordination of strategies among all the actors of the tourism value chain. With this session, we want to contribute to consolidate the points that have been analyzed over the past 2 days. And this session will be moderated by Michael Collins. He's the founder and managing director of TravelMedia.ie in the United Kingdom. Michael Collins is a travel journalist, writer, commentator, and public relations expert. Michael founded TravelMedia.ie in 2000. From 2000 to 2009, he was publisher and editor of Backpacker Europe and Abroad magazines. He also contracted published travel titles for Stina Ferris, The Business Post, and many others. For over 20 years, Michael has been a regular contributor to national radio, television, and print as a travel expert. He also podcasts and produces travel content on YouTube. Michael speaks on all things travel media and digital marketing at industry conferences worldwide, including the ITV Berlin, TVEX, and others. This journalist is based between Ireland and France and continues traveling weekly. So please give a round of applause to Michael Collins. Un aplauso para Michael Collins. Hi, Michael.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Oh, thank you so much. All yours. Enjoy. See you later.
Half of it was true. I won't tell you which half. Now, I'll just pull up my notes here and we'll introduce our panel. So first, can I please welcome to the stage Mr. Mark Tanzer, who is Chief Executive of ABTA, the UK Travel Association. Next, Mr. Norbert Fiebig, President of the German Travel Association. Ms. María Frontera, President of the Mallorca Hotels Association. And last but not least, Mr. Andreu Serra, Island Minister of Tourism here in Mallorca. Please take a seat, everybody. I'm embarrassed to say this is my first time in Mallorca, this is my first time in the Balearic Islands. I spent 20 years working as a travel journalist, editor, publisher. Every role that there is in the travel and media space I have done. But I'm delighted to be here, and thank you to Mallorca for hosting all of us, in particular for hosting me my first time, and also to UNWTO for hosting us as well. I did a little bit of research. And I discovered after more than 200 conferences, press trips, over 20 years, this is my first sustainability conference. I've done travel technology, Focusrite, I've done TVEX, travel bloggers conferences, but first time doing sustainable. And I'm wondering, and we'll get into this here on stage, is this because sustainability has been a niche topic? Has it been niche and we haven't engaged with the broader travel industry and with the broader media? And we'll get into that today, but I'm surprised that this is the first time that I have done anything sustainable as well. I also looked at all the press trips that I've been involved in through my organisation, and out of the 200 odd, only one touched on sustainability. I wasn't on that trip, but what was interesting about it was a sustainable press trip for sustainable media. It wasn't for mainstream media. I won't mention the tourist board that was involved, but what they wanted media who are writing about sustainability. And in reality, there are very few mainstream media who are focused on sustainability. We'll get into that again later. First, in terms of our audience here, my understanding from speaking to the organisers is about 30% of our audience is actually online, and most of those are international, a mix of people based in mainland Spain, and then also around Europe. To get a sense of who's in the room tonight, or this afternoon rather, and how we manage the questions, can I get a show of hands? Who here is from Mallorca? So ballpark, probably half. Who here is from the Balearic Islands? Keep your hands up if you're from Mallorca, and then we'll keep going. And then who here is from Spain? And now all hands down, who here is from outside of Spain? So let's go for 20%. Interesting. Okay, let's get up and running now. Oh yes, we have it already up here. Okay, let's summarize a little bit in terms of setting the scene of Mallorca and what tourism means to Mallorca. We've got some stats up here, we'll run through them very quickly and then we'll touch on one or two. In terms of our panelists, we have a really good lineup here. In fact, the organisers have done a wonderful job. What we have here is we have 2 participants from Mallorca. We have the tourist board and we have the hotel association. And then we have their 2 biggest source markets. We have Germany and we have the UK. So this should make for a very interesting conversation. So let's look at some of these statistics. Back in 2019, nearly 12 million, or just under 12 million visitors came to Mallorca. That nosedived to 2 million, like every other destination in the world back in 2020, and has come back only a small amount in reality to 5 million in 2021. My first question then to Andreu, as the Minister, do you want to get back to 2019 figures, or do you want to get back in a different way? Is it no longer about numbers? Is it now more about getting the right visitor?
Okay, thank you very much. I want to speak in Spanish, for me it's better. Nosotros queremos volver a los números. Bueno, nosotros queremos y somos una industria, un destino, que evidentemente tiene una oferta y tiene un volumen, pero nuestro trabajo ahora mismo es trabajar hacia el valor. Nuestro trabajo ahora mismo es buscar como esa curva que tenemos de incremento, sobre todo en la temporada más alta, en el verano, en ese segmento que tenemos de Solid, que siempre ha sido el líder para nosotros, podemos trabajarla en muchos más meses, aplanando ese espacio de curva y teniendo esa consolidación. Por lo tanto, para eso somos muy conscientes de que la circularidad, la sostenibilidad, ese concepto de turismo regenerativo es clave para buscar todo eso, a partir además de un concepto que yo creo que es básico, que es el tema de la calidad, que es el tema de la digitalización y la sostenibilidad, porque esas son palancas que van de la mano, lo hemos visto durante las diferentes conferencias, y después, sobre todo, poniendo en valor nuestras principales experiencias. Mallorca tiene y ofrece un destino de deporte, un destino de cultura, un destino que conecta directamente con la naturaleza y, evidentemente, ofrece experiencias a lo largo del año, en nuestro principal producto, que es el Sol y Playa, pero también a lo largo del año. Y ese es un poco el planteamiento de trabajo que tenemos. Ese concepto de ser líderes en circularidad y ir más allá, como decía ayer el doctor Riera, para trabajar hacia el turismo regenerativo.
Thank you, Andrea.
Translate it.
So Maria, as a hotelier yourself and also with the association, does that ring true for you? Do you want the numbers back? I mean, you're looking at this maybe from a more commercial perspective.
Well, I think we have to check it from different perspectives. We wish it will come back in a different way. That's, of course, during the past years we have been working towards a more sustainable tourism, more intelligent and more resilient. But at the moment, what we see is that it's been reactivation. We have seen the numbers, the occupancies for the next months, and we think because many people that we were talking before cannot go to certain destinations that they were going before, longer ones, they may rest, they may stay in Europe, and we have been always a favorite destination, so maybe we have those numbers before what we think they will come. We have been working towards that transformation and that change. We think we can see that this year. And we started February and March with good numbers. That means that, as Andreu was saying, maybe that pyramid, it's coming down and we can work much better February, March, April, and the end of the months of the year. But we have to see how it comes this year. We try to make the best of it. And of course, on the commercial part, we have to take the opportunity whenever it comes and the best of it in the better way. We have learned from these years, yeah. So
Mark from the UK and Norbert from Germany, they still want your visitors, but they want different visitors and less of them. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you adapt? How do you adapt to the destination and what they're doing?
we appreciate very much what's going on here, and I believe it's fantastic. The move is going on here, and the question is, does appreciate the customer that what is built up here? And I believe there is still a big gap between what is offered and what the client is finally appreciating and paying for, and is that in his awareness already? And there I do see the biggest gap so far. Just an example, when we are doing surveys, more than 60% are stating that they are very interested in sustainable travel. But the final decision is much, much below. So for one example is when it comes to flights, and we are talking about that in Leeds, I believe the chance to make a flight more sustainable is to compensate it. So we have some around 1% of the clients compensating their flight. So there is a big gap between what people feel they should do and what the final customer's decision is. And that is, I believe, the challenge for the destination and for all of us, to raise the customer's awareness in order to make the sustainable actions we are doing evaluated USP to the clients.
Let's move on to point number 4. In 2016, a sustainable tax was introduced. From the destination perspective, so Andreu, Andrea, how easy was that to do? And do you think going forward that is still the right strategy? As in, to tax the tourist, who is ultimately our client, should the money that we all need to reinvent our industry, should that be coming from government? Should it be coming from the EU? Should it be coming from elsewhere, as opposed to the tourist?
Shall I start?
Yes.
Well, it was a complicated issue because the hoteliers didn't agree with that, because they were charging the tourists something that we should have organized internally in our islands ourselves. Most of the tourists believe we have to do things better. So if it helps us to make the destination more sustainable, they will agree. They haven't seen it. Maybe, and that's part of what you were telling us about the communication and how we show the changes to the clients. They didn't notice where they went, those investments. And of course, the management of those budgets were not so efficient. So we were discussing that subject. I think it hasn't ended yet, and we shall improve that. Public and private collaboration is essential, and it has been the key for being a good destination also these past 2 years, and we should apply the same on those budget that we have on the tourist tax. But I believe that we can do it in another way. I know other destinations are thinking of implementing the same thing, but truly it has to be really transparent, it has to be efficient, and it has to go where it has to go. With numbers, we have talked about methodology, measuring the impact. Well, that's something, it should be done with that.
I entirely agree.
Andreu.
Sí. Bueno, yo creo que es importante, nosotros creemos que es importante ser conscientes de que la Comunidad Balear, en este caso, con el impuesto de turismo sostenible, se puso muy por delante en algunas de las conciencias que a lo mejor podía tener el resto de territorios sobre lo importante del peso que tenían pues, todos los turistas que llegaban a Mallorca o que llegaban a Baleares y evidentemente tenían un consumo y aportaban dentro de ese proceso. Ese proceso ha sido, yo creo que ya está muy asentado, yo creo que en la visión del turista esa aportación es positiva y es cierto que en los procesos de mejora tenemos que ser capaces de conectar todo lo que se está haciendo. Esta cumbre es un espacio donde ya generar ese diálogo de cara al futuro, pero ser capaces de llegar a la comunicación con el turista de cuáles son las realidades de lo que se hace con ese impuesto, pero con el resto también de la economía, porque al final es verdad que puede haber un impuesto que llega a una finalidad, pero también es un gasto por parte de todo el gobierno en general sobre lo que supone toda la industria. Y esa compartir, yo creo que esa es la parte comunicativa que yo estoy de acuerdo que tenemos que trabajar, mejorar, precisamente desde la promoción, que es nuestra competencia, ahí vamos a aportar mucho para que eso sea posible.
I agreed. I mean, I'm going to stay on and do the social session this evening, and then tomorrow do the tour, because we spent the last 2 days talking about water and waste management, which is not the sexy side of tourism. So, but I'm intrigued to see it, in fact, and as a member of the media, it's the first time I'll ever see what's actually going on behind the scenes. So I think it's really important that that's part of the program here, that we actually get to understand. Of course, the tourist never sees that and doesn't want to see it either. Can I jump back to point number one? Sorry, Mark. Yes.
I think, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, good to see you all. Thanks for inviting me. I mean, I think the issue came up earlier this morning about, the residents, how residents feel about tourism, and I think this is an example where, that transparency that's just been called for is so important. I think if it's just going for purely touristic purposes, then I think the other residents will say, well, hang on, why am I paying for this out of my general taxation? If it's part of a sort of development of the economy all around, then that needs to be explained to be able to take residents with us on this journey, and not suddenly feel, well, I'm being taxed for something that's really for the benefit of hotels and overseas tourists rather than for me as a national. So again, I think coming up with a narrative, arguments and a story that works for residents, for stakeholders, for customers, is the big challenge. We spend a lot of time really talking to ourselves about what we're doing, and it's great. We've heard this morning about fantastic initiatives at the destination level and tour operators and travel agents doing good stuff, but we're not telling people that in a powerful way, I think, at the moment.
So communications is key.
Yeah, well, you've got to do something. You can't just communicate the way out of this challenge. I think the challenge tourism has is it's a great force for good. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I think it creates jobs. Number one sustainability goal, which we have behind us, is fin de la pobreza, end poverty. And tourism probably does more for that worldwide than any other industry. It brings jobs and wealth to places that haven't got any other economies. So it is a powerful force for good. As we heard from Rio this morning, we've got to be very honest about the difficulties that can bring and manage those, and really find a balance that is optimal for all of the good it brings and managing the downsides. But it can't just be a PR story. I don't think we can PR. We can't just public relations won't do it for the industry. We have to change the way we do things. But when we change them, and the destination, the company, the hotel level, we then need to tell people what's happening.
Thank you, Mark. Ria, you mentioned that forward bookings are very good for January, February. One thing I've noticed in other markets is concern that this year we're going to see a blip. As in, people haven't travelled in 2 years. They want to travel. They will travel whatever the circumstances almost, they're so desperate to get away. And also they have deposits that they maybe paid for holidays back in 2019, 2020, and they can now use those. And I'm seeing in other markets expectation that 2022 will be good, and then actually it'll fall away again in 2024, 23, or sorry, fall away in 23 and then come back finally in 24. How do you manage that as a hotelier, as an organisation? And I'll then ask the same question to Andreu.
How do we manage the coming back?
Well, as in you have to bring staff on board, but not bring too many because you feel, or am I wrong? Do you think that actually, it's going to keep going up?
Well, what we saw before the pandemic is that everything was coming up, so that should come back again. If the whole world is not open because we cannot travel long distance or because we still don't feel secure, then the conclusion is that maybe they will stay near us, or at least the Mediterranean destinations. Of course, for the numbers and for the firms that we are working at the whole hotel touristic chain, and here at the Balearic Islands, most of all the economic sectors are related to tourism somehow, it's positive and we need that. We don't want to have problems managing certain numbers coming at the same time. And of course, our airports, they were ready. We remember how we were talking about, coming the Brexit and how we will manage that at the airports. And we didn't have the chance to even try that because last year we didn't have so many tourists. So I'm not sure how the destination itself will manage. I know we have new technology that applies now and people can see where the visitors are, not to go when it's a hot hour or there is many people. Cruises, how they manage the arrival of the cruises have also been taken care of, so we think that will be better. But numbers coming from the airport, with the planification of the flights, the occupancy of those flights, we don't know yet. They go to flats, they go to hotels, and they go to visit friends. So the combination of the three things, it could be too much, or it could be normal as 2019. We have to see. We have tried to reinvent or at least reformulate our internal processes to make better experiences. But inside the hotels, outside will depend again of that coordination. Private and public sector together. I think here is again the key to make a better experience, not only for the visitors, but also for the residents. If we work very aligned with the same objectives, I think we can manage and try to make the best of each opportunity we're going to have.
Andreu, how does the island manage numbers going up and down?
Bueno, yo una primera cuestión que quería comentar del debate, ¿no? Y hablábamos también del tema de la comunicación y la gestión, yo creo que es muy importante para los destinos en el futuro, en el cual el turista ya no va a un resort, se queda en la playa y vuelve, sino que forma parte del mismo ecosistema de la sociedad. No solo tiene que haber una reconciliación, sino que tiene que formar parte de la vida cotidiana del mallorquín y la mallorquina, es decir, del residente. Y esa es la mejor experiencia y el mejor trabajo que tenemos que hacer juntos, ¿no? Es verdad que en los meses de picos, pues evidentemente tenemos que gestionar todo ese volumen y evidentemente lo sabemos hacer y lo haremos muy bien, porque precisamente, como comentaba María, pues trabajamos la colaboración público-privada para que la experiencia sea muy positiva. Por parte del gobierno se ha trabajado en el tema, aquí está Rosana, la directora general, que ha trabajado en el tema de los cruceros y de cómo gestionar y ordenar todo este proceso. Los flujos dentro de la ciudad también se están trabajando desde el Ayuntamiento de Palma, precisamente para poder trabajar la capacidad y la llegada y cómo lo podemos mejorar. Y evidentemente nosotros en esta temporada seguimos insistiendo en el trabajo, pero vamos a intentar hacerlo mucho más desde ese concepto que hemos trabajado con la ABTA de Observatorio Mundial del Turismo Sostenible, y eso van a ser uno de los principales pilares del trabajo. El Observatorio Mundial lo que va a permitir también es tener un punto de observación de los flujos, de los movimientos y también una capacidad predictiva para poder generar nuevas experiencias y nuevas alternativas, que precisamente esa va a ser la inteligencia turística que queremos incorporar, que nos permita tomar decisiones sobre cómo gestionar lo que es el volumen de los turistas que vienen durante todo el año, porque el objetivo además es que este proceso sea durante todo el año y conviviendo directamente con nuestros residentes. En el momento en el que somos parte, todos aquellos procesos que a veces se hablan de filias y fobias, ¿no?, en algunos momentos sobre el tema del turismo, dentro de los destinos turísticos, si formas parte y eres parte activa de la vida y convives en ese espacio, eso no se genera, forma parte de tu ADN.
Can I interrupt for a moment? Public transportation has been also reinforced. I mean, now they are checking to put more lines, to go to more places, and for the first time, during all those years of touristic experience, they have given the importance to the public transportation as it is, because most of our visitors in the European countries, they use a lot of public transportation, and it's something the residents, we don't do here. Most of us, we have our own car, so that is also a big cultural change to make the destination more sustainable for the tourists and also for the residents. So we have to change also that as a resident and facilitate the mobility for the tourists. So I think that will also, maybe we can see a big change on that this season. Sorry for that. I know it was
No, thank you.
one time.
Point 6, and then we're going to move on. Mallorca has made a decision to limit the number of beds available, 400,000 of which 300,000 are hotels and 100,000 are guest houses or holiday apartments. Does that have unintended consequences? As in, does that mean that as people try and move up the value chain, that a certain segment of the market will be left behind, as in the 1, 2, 3 star or self-catering, and then we have more and more only 4 and 5 star? And also, how does a new entrant come into the market? If we're already at saturation, how does a new hotel company get in? Do they have to buy a 2 star and then refurbish it? Andreu.
Bueno, no, lo primero para poder plantear, evidentemente nosotros, yo creo, precisamente en este foro se está planteando, yo creo que todos los destinos que quieren marcar una ruta tienen que tener una planificación, tienen que tener una estrategia y tienen que tener una reflexión. Aquellos productos, aquellas industrias que no reflexionan sobre su realidad, sobre cómo impactan, cómo se gestionan, cómo se desarrollan, están condenadas al fracaso y nosotros estamos condenados a ser líderes, todo lo contrario. Por tanto, tiene que haber una reflexión y esa reflexión tiene que ser con gobernanza y pactada. Y de ahí el Consejo de Mallorca elaboró un día un plan de intervención en donde había un concepto de plazas, en donde se planteaban consensuadamente cuál era el volumen y hacia dónde íbamos de cara al futuro y cuántas podíamos tener más vacantes. En estos momentos, con la nueva ley turística, estas plazas están planteadas a poder realizar una modificación puntual que pueda llevar un punto de decrecimiento y una nueva reflexión. En esta reflexión continua que yo creo que tenemos que tener ante las nuevas realidades que vamos viviendo y que cada vez nos aceleramos más después de una pandemia, después de diferentes crisis, y ese es el momento en el que nos encontramos como Mallorca, como isla, en ese momento del gobierno. Pero realmente tenemos una capacidad óptima de poder recibir a nuestros turistas con nuestras plazas, con las plazas con las que tenemos, y ese ha sido el trabajo que hemos desarrollado. Y un trabajo que tiene que ir hacia el futuro. Nosotros elaboramos también un plan estratégico hacia la experiencia y hacia el desarrollo de lo que sería nuestra isla, y evidentemente ahora encaramos una nueva fase en la que incorporamos, a pesar también por una recepción de las competencias que tenemos de ordenación y de planificación, una visión completa de hacia dónde tiene que ir nuestra isla desde el punto de vista de este turismo regenerativo y de este turismo circular. Yo creo que una de las experiencias que hemos tenido, que yo me llevo de este summit, aparte de que lo volveremos a hacer porque ayer lo anunció la presidenta, que seguiremos en esta senda de alianza con la Organización Mundial del Turismo, es precisamente esta necesidad de volver a reflexionar y tener una reflexión continua hacia el futuro de nuestra isla en ese proceso de gobernanza, y que es necesario ese debate, y que ese debate además hay que abrirlo al aspecto económico, al aspecto social. Es verdad que los hemos enfocado muy bien en el aspecto medioambiental como isla frágil que tenemos que desarrollar, esas infraestructuras que son necesarias, y todo nuestro empuje va a ir hacia la circularidad y hacia la regeneración. Ese es el compromiso. A la digitalización, tenemos nuestras palabras que construyen nuestros pensamientos, los tenemos clarísimos. Yo creo que ahora es el momento de afianzar ese proyecto de futuro. ¿Pero por qué? Pues porque es el ADN de esta isla, porque es la estructura económica y porque creemos que de ahí es el futuro que permite esa reconstrucción y esa regeneración de nuestra isla. Y el futuro, ayer decía el doctor Riera, si era un problema o una oportunidad del turismo, ¿no? Se hacía esa gran pregunta. Yo creo que va muchísimo más allá, lo comentaba Catalina de Andreu, yo creo que va muchísimo más allá. Yo creo que es realmente el cambio se va a poder producir antes aquí que en otros destinos o que en otros territorios, precisamente por la industria turística.
Thank you, Andreu. Anybody else want to comment on the why before we move on?
Well, I think you want to.
No,
It is
you go
important,
ahead.
if we can, to also focus on other sectors of the economy, if we can. I think there are other, like technology, we have created many, I haven't myself, sorry. Well, there have been many like Pepe Mañas before, that said technological firms that have created new products and new firms, new industry, that it could be, boosted from the public administration, not only the touristic. But we have to all work together, and we have to have compromise to make the best. We always have to check that touristic industry has been very important here. And we have to take not only the negative, which they always have some negative things, of course, that we have to take care. And maybe before we didn't focus properly, but now all together we are doing that, and we have to show it so the consumers will notice that. But the most important, I will say, of that is that when you are specialized in an industry, is also very good. It's a privileged situation, and we have to see it as a competitive advantage and not negative. But we have to work on it to show it, and also don't leave the negative aspects and grasp on them.
Norbert.
We were discussing during that conference lots of, I believe, fantastic projects which are all needs to be continued, but they are all relating to ground. Looking at the service chain of an entire journey, and when it comes to carbon footprint, and we are talking a lot about Glasgow Declaration, about global warming, and that has directly to do with carbon footprint. If we look at the service chain of a journey, 80% are related to transportation, and that is mainly flight. So if we talk about sustainability, and if we talk about how to get the carbon emission down, we should not leave that topic out. That is a very tricky topic, no doubts. But what Mark was just mentioning, if we don't, as an industry, don't find a solution there, the policymakers will face us with regulations, and that is going to have a real impact on travel, on flying to destinations, and that is going to have a real impact on the destinations, on the economic, financial situation. Just looking to Northern Africa, so Egypt and Tunisia, they rely by some 40% on their GDP on tourism. Once we are not able and allowed to fly there anymore, we cause a real problem, and travel will look like very differently. So what is the solution? The solution is to that issue. We all need to make lots of pressure to the policymakers, to the industry, in order to get alternative fuels. That is the key, and that is not available at the moment, but that needs lots of investments, lots of pressure from us, from everybody, in order to be able to fly in the future, at least with a lower carbon footprint, and that needs lots of international alliance collaborations. That is not to solve the problem on a national basis, and we as an industry need to focus on that as well. That is the 80%. We were talking about the 20%. That is all important. Everything is important and it needs to be continued, but we are leaving out in that discussion, once we as an industry are faced with carbon footprint, we are leaving out in that conference more or less the big bit, the 80% of flights, and there are solutions, and we need to push that solutions.
So Norbert, when I listen to the scientists, what they say is we need a new industrial revolution. We're tinkering at the edges at the moment, we're making small changes, we're not moving fast enough at all. What some scientists are saying is that we need to completely rebuild our industry. We look at what we've done with the pandemic, we look at what we've done as a result of the war in Ukraine, and we can make changes we never thought possible. We can look at the vaccines. And the question is, can we apply that same will and cooperation globally to the travel industry? Mark, you wanted to comment.
Yeah, a couple of things, Michael. Just your question, why tourism? I go back to what I said earlier about reducing poverty. I mean, tourism doesn't just create wealth; it creates jobs. And in a world that's becoming more and more sort of driven by technology and jobs are being reduced, tourism does actually celebrate the fact that a lot of the services are delivered by human to human. Which is really important. It's important in Mallorca, but it's important in a lot of economies where having people working is massively important. And I think to be able to get the right people, we talked this morning, it was about human capital, it was about how do we get the right people in. People will come into this industry because they see it's got strong values. We do the right thing in tourism because it's the right thing to do. I mean, yes, we're trying to stop governments intervening and we want to have shareholders, but fundamentally it's because we want to do things the right way. And certainly with the younger generation, if I can put it like that, they're very, very hot on what are the values, what are you doing about this? They want to work in an industry and for a company and for a hotel that is doing things right. And if we don't do that, we'll lose the kind of war for talent, and it is a real war out there. It's a cliche, but I can tell you, everyone is fighting to get talented people into their company, into their industry, and we need to do this from that dimension as well, just to keep the software, if I can put it, the human beings going into the industry for the future.
So we've kind of touched on the next slide, which is government and institutions, and Norbert said if we don't react, governments will step in. And one example of that is, slow travel or a month-long break as opposed to a city break that's 3 days. And will we see governments introduce carbon taxes that penalise somebody who takes a 3-day trip versus somebody who takes a 1-month trip? Andreu, I wonder if you could comment on that in terms of, what is the thinking of government and how do you approach this in terms of trying to find a balance?
Sí. Bueno, nosotros somos conscientes de que a partir de lo que ha sido la pandemia, yo creo que las palancas se han revolucionado en algunos aspectos, ¿no? Y yo creo que todos lo que percibíamos que podía ser un futuro ha adelantado otros momentos en los que nuestra vida ha cambiado, ¿no? Y yo creo que la tecnología ha sido una de esas palancas más que han acelerado precisamente, y además esa capacidad de movernos, esa capacidad de tener posibilidad de teletrabajo, yo creo que se ha afianzado muchísimo más. Eso nos obliga a los destinos a adaptarnos a esa nueva realidad, ¿no? A veces cuando hablamos del tiempo, ¿no?, de que un turista llega a Mallorca, a veces decíamos que lo normal eran 8 días, 9 días, 10 días hace años, ahora se había cortado a 4 días, a 5 días, a 6 días, y ahora de repente también surgen esas posibilidades de tener personas que puedan venir a trabajar y a disfrutar, ¿no?, y a conocer otra realidad. Yo creo que gracias también a este momento tan terrible que ha vivido nuestra sociedad, pero que también ha generado esas palancas. Y en eso tenemos que estar preparados, ¿no? No solo es el nómada digital, sino también el que necesita toda una serie de recursos para poder trabajar en Mallorca y toda una serie de cambios dentro de lo que son nuestros destinos. En eso nos tenemos que volcar, tenemos que estar delante, ¿no? El otro día teníamos una conferencia aquí que hablábamos del metaverso, que hablábamos de esos espacios paralelos de convivencia, lo decíamos con nuestros jóvenes. Nuestros jóvenes están muy concienciados desde el punto de vista de la circularidad y la sostenibilidad, pero también están absolutamente revolucionados en la digitalización, en espacios y en aspectos que nosotros también desconocemos y que tenemos que escuchar de manera activa y ser capaces de adaptar, porque ya son los turistas del futuro, ya buscan ese espacio de experiencias intro y fuera, experiencias vividas y también virtuales, y eso lo tenemos que hacer.
María, do you think we've learned any lessons from the pandemic? I mean, I've got a slide behind us that shows the Ukrainian flag, and then the pandemic, the coronavirus, and the bat. And the bat that we understand, we still don't know for sure, but we weren't sustainable in terms of our human development, and therefore we encroached on nature, and as a result, a bat delivered us coronavirus, and that ended up in our food chain through travel, and it spread. But then straight after the pandemic, we go into the war, and Another UN report came out this week said that we need to accelerate and accelerate. And I feel like those headlines happen in the media for a day or two and then we forget and we move on. And yet it's the war actually that has made us realise our reliance on fossil fuels. And I mean, take my own country, Ireland. Last week the government said, okay, we're going to accelerate our wind programme. But they should have done that without the war. They didn't need that to push them. Do you think we've learned the lessons, or any lessons?
Well, I think we all learned many lessons during the last 2 years. What I don't know, because humans tend to forget about the bad things. So I don't know what is going to stay from those learnings. I'm very always optimistic and positive, so I think we shall recall and always repeat learnings from the last 2 years, so it stays. And I'm sure the ones we have compromised, we will fight for it. And when we talk here that our destiny needs to keep changing from a line economy to a circular economy, is because we believe in it. We think it's the only way to make a big difference in our territory, because it's a limited territory, but also because we want to be different or very different from the other destinations in the world. I know it is really ambitious, and I don't know when we're going to achieve that, but certainly the hoteliers are on that direction. We have some norms that will accelerate that. We have Andreu here, who represents the public administration, and they really want to make it. But the learnings, the knowledge, as I said before, that we have to share is ginormous. At the moment, we need lots of re-education, lots of training that we are not having. And this is very necessary. The war, well, the coronavirus just shows us how sensible we are all and delicate, and how are we connected in the world. So it's not only to fly and to have fun and to go on holidays. We have to be careful with those things. I think we all reformulate and rethink many things, not in our professional places only, but also in our personal lives. And we have changed many things, not only the new ones that are working from home. We changed the corporate traveling that is disappeared, or part of it has disappeared, but other things with our personal interactions. We have to take advantage of those learnings and put it into practice in our businesses. The personal relations are really important, the good ones. We all learn that negative relationships, it's not that, it's not the public, no. But I think we have to take away certain nocive, or that they don't give you any good feedback. So if you choose the partners, the alliances, and you work really very tight on same objectives, we can do that, and we have to show it to the world and communicate it really well, so the clients can choose these destinations. I'm sure that in England and in Germany and all the other countries, they have had the same processes. So we have to show through the carbon trade, of course, and all the vectors and pillars, the criteria that we have, how we can change that. And we cannot forget those 2 years. They are very important, and they were for some reason.
I don't know if you listened to the session yesterday, I think it was Nina was saying that the carbon offset system is already broken, as in supply and demand don't match. So if you book a flight and you get at the very end of your booking process, you can offset your journey and pay 10 euros or 50 euros, whatever it is. In reality, there isn't enough supply to meet that demand. So the question is, how do we go forward when that system is already broken? And here's a slide here. There's a book I read recently called Supercharge, written by 2 economists on sustainability. And the red represents the stock market. The last 15 years, fossil fuel industries have continuously gone down. So the stock price of those industries has fallen. And guess what the green represents?
Yeah.
Green, wind, sustainability. So it's not that this is a cost to us as an industry. In fact, it's an opportunity. To give you an example, wind energy makes on average between an 8 and 10% return, whereas all of our governments in Europe can borrow at less than 2% now. So therefore there's a 6% margin. So we almost need a mind shift in terms of how we approach this and how we invest. Andreu, I wonder if you can touch on this briefly.
Bueno, yo efectivamente creo que es el momento, lo estábamos comentando antes con todo lo que tenemos, que evidentemente todos éramos conscientes de una realidad, todos éramos conscientes de que los recursos son finitos y todos éramos conscientes de que tenemos que buscar. Nosotros, la industria turística y Mallorca, también en ese poder de las palabras, hablaba de la importancia de la resiliencia que hemos tenido, pero también somos conscientes de que esa resiliencia y ese aguante tiene que tener unas consistencias, unas estructuras, unas cuestiones estructurales que permitan precisamente que la industria turística sea sostenible económicamente, y no solo de manera circular, sino que podamos hacerlo. Y yo creo que esa palanca es la que va a generar precisamente que la industria verde, que las energías verdes puedan ser realmente una realidad y un acelerador de ese proceso. Yo igualmente creo que es importante en estos procesos de evolución pensar en que todos estamos preparados para medir, ¿no? Entonces tenemos que medir esa realidad, lo estamos planteando con ese concepto, pero yo siempre introduzco una pregunta a la medición. ¿Medir para qué? ¿Hacia dónde vamos y cuál es nuestro destino? Porque la medición simplemente por medir no nos sirve de nada. La medición simplemente como advertencia tampoco nos sirve de nada. La medición simplemente para dar datos no nos sirve de nada. La medición tiene que ir hacia un objetivo, hacia ese espacio predictivo, y tenemos que saber entre todos hacia dónde vamos. ¿Cuál es el futuro de nuestra industria? ¿Cuál es nuestra capacidad? ¿Cuál es nuestro espacio? ¿Qué queremos trabajar? ¿Cómo lo queremos trabajar? Y a partir de ahí utilizar esos datos. Pero además, esa capacidad de medición que hablábamos con el observatorio tiene que tener un elemento predictivo. Tenemos que decir cuál va a ser nuestro futuro a 10, 20, 30 años vista para que desde el punto de vista de los gobiernos podamos preparar estrategias. La energía verde es una estrategia a medio y largo plazo. En los espacios y los tiempos de los que estamos hablando, precisamente podemos ver que podemos no llegar a tiempo. Por lo tanto, fundamental el proceso de medición en lo que son la industria turística, pero también la capacidad de predicción y la toma de decisiones anticipada por parte de los gobiernos y por parte de toda la cadena de valor turística en esta cogobernanza público-privada. Tenemos que tener capacidad de anticipación porque eso será clave para el éxito de la industria.
Thank you, Andreu. We'll put up another slide behind us that says, is sustainable tourism a product? As in, should we be putting sustainable tourism front and centre of everything we do? Or is it just something that sits on the side, it's a label sitting in a corner, it's a small statement at the bottom of the website? Mark, do you think sustainable tourism can be a product? As in, should we be pushing this right to the very front of everything we do as an industry?
Yeah, I never like the word product in tourism because it always sounds so cold. I don't think it is. I think it's like the backbone of what we do. You know, we have every year ABTA has an overseas convention where we bring 500 industry leaders together. And 10 years ago, we'd have a session on sustainability, and you get the sustainability experts in. In 2019, we had a convention. You had the finance directors, you had the legal directors, you had the chief executives all sitting in the room because for them it's become absolutely mainstream in across their entire product range. It's not about a particular type of holiday or a holiday in a particular type of destination or a particular type of customer. It's right through how they manage and think about their business, their own offices, their supply chain, the destinations that they go to. So I think there's been a huge shift over the last decade in sustainability becoming much more strategic, if I can put it like that, than tactical.
Maria, I see you nodding your head there.
Well, I was saying, I agree.
And Norbert as well.
And Norbert too? Oh, that's strange.
I was asked to agree on everything. I entirely agree, but I believe in the long run, sustainability is not the question anymore. Sustainability will be the standard. Looking to the flights, and I'm the only person here, and I wonder why talking about flights, but what the airlines are committed to, by 2050 to be carbon free. So that is going to be the standard. So you don't have the decision anymore to go for a sustainable or not sustainable trip. So, and that's what we need to aim for. And we need to use each and every chance to get on the way to that goal. The far as the carbon footprint down. And one example I don't understand, the European Commission is making, and that for good reason, big noises about sustainability. But what they don't do, and they would have that in their hand, to create a single European sky. There are calculations that by creating such single sky, that will save some 6% of the consumption of the emission of aircraft, and they don't do anything for decades already, and that needs to be pushed as well.
It's true. I mean, we are very late on that, and that was a huge opportunity, and we have lost many years, and still nowadays, sustainability, it is, as Mark, you were telling us, now it is in all the departments of the companies, and it's not only a department that was alone, you know. Now it's integrated, and it's just something that it has to be taken into account as a strategy from the top. That we notice also with the social responsible departments, you know, that is in all the parts of the operations of the hotel, very necessary. I didn't talk about the flight, sorry, Andreu, because connectivity is essential for us. So imagine about the flights, how important they are for our Balearic Islands. And it's true that we should all work to minimize those impacts, because we really need it like the air, like the water, those connectivity. So we see how we're gonna develop. But the European Commission has an important issue. It has had it for so many years there, and they didn't do anything about it.
20 years.
Exactly. And nowadays we should all push at least as a first step.
That's what we do.
Okay.
We did have 5 minutes, now we've got 9 minutes left, so I'm not sure actually how long we've got. Maybe one of the staff here will just tell me. We've got 5 minutes, okay. Quickly, let's jump onto this, because in doing the research for this event today, I spoke to a lot of people in the industry in different sectors. And a colleague of mine said to me, she said, I support sustainability 100%, but I don't know how to manage it, it's a minefield. And I've just put up a few examples of all the different logos, brandings, labels that are available, and that's just a handful of what I found. And this is the problem for the consumer in terms of, you know, what do the labels mean? Should the European Commission be leading the way in this? Because it's almost impossible to know, are you buying a genuine green product or a genuine sustainable product? Andreu, I wonder if you could touch on that for a second.
Bueno, yo creo precisamente que estábamos hablando de todo el proceso a nivel europeo, ¿no? de los vuelos, de todo ese proceso. Pero yo también creo que es importante las unificaciones europeas y las certificaciones europeas precisamente que generen todos esos espacios de circularidad. Precisamente en este summit tuvimos la primera cadena hotelera con certificación en circularidad UNE, que es una norma europea internacional que precisamente busca ese sentido. Efectivamente, cuando se producen toda una serie de nuevas actividades o en este momento el tema de la sostenibilidad, que ya forma parte transversal, lo comentaban antes, yo creo que es importante, ya no es un departamento más, ya tiene que formar parte de toda la cadena de una industria, tiene que formar parte de todas las administraciones en todos los departamentos. No hay departamento de sostenibilidad, tiene que ser transversal a todos, pues efectivamente también pasa que puedan aparecer muchas marcas y muchos logos y muchas estructuras de certificación. Lo importante es que haya directivas europeas que permitan esa certificación internacional, que nos den esa pauta, esos conceptos de lo que es propio de cada uno en cuanto a lo que es ecológico, lo que es ese espacio bio o también esos espacios de circularidad, y que eso se pueda traducir en el desarrollo de la actividad de la industria.
So at the European level, we were very successful. We implemented the EU Digital Progress Certificate in a very short amount of time. Our 27 members were using it almost instantaneously. And in fact, there are now over 40 different countries that use the EU digital certificate. So we were able to do it, but yet this is still a minefield, and it's very hard for any of us to prove how green we are or not. Mark, I don't know if you want to comment on this. I mean, does this matter in the UK? Is there a standard or certification that works?
You're right, there are a number of different schemes. We ourselves at ABTA have one, Travel Life, which audits hotels. It works with the hotels to improve their environmental and carbon waste and their social credentials. I think that it is gradually, smaller coming to it. I think people need to recognise that these are the criteria that certification schemes need to meet. You're right, it is confusing for customers. In a way, the customers, they don't want to have to think, they want us as the industry to have taken care of this. They don't want to have to be thinking, oh, is this hotel sustainable or not? They expect it of their tour operator or their travel agency. Put them in places where they can feel comfortable. So I think the industry has to get its house in order and use these schemes to raise the standards.
Let's move on to media. Obviously that's my life, my work for the last 20 years. And when I sit down with colleagues in the media, if we're on a trip or at a conference, we inevitably discuss two things. One thing we discuss is that the press strip model that existed for the last 20 years is broken. We want to tell stories. We don't want to go and see the top 10 most visited attractions in a city and a destination. We actually want to tell stories with people, real people. So I've done a number of press trips over the course of the pandemic with UNWTO. We were lucky to be able to travel while most of the world was shut down. And I traveled with the New York Times, with BBC, with El País here in Spain, and the same conversation. We want to tell stories. So here's an example. I was in Barbados filming with ITV, which Mark will know is one of the largest commercial channels in the UK, with their breakfast show. We filmed for a week. We had 4 wonderful stories produced, and I said to the producer afterwards, what do you want to do next? And he says, I want to do a story on sustainability. And I said, that should be easy. Everybody's talking about sustainability at the moment. I contacted 2 tourist boards, both here in Europe, I won't name names. Neither were able to manage the request, because the request was, I don't want to just visit a destination and do some generic filming about sustainability. The producer wanted real stories. He wanted a restaurant that had farm to table. He wanted to visit the restaurant and the farm, etc., etc. And the tourist boards, I felt, weren't, I'm not being critical, they just weren't set up to manage that kind of request. And I wonder, as a panel, should we be using the media more? I touched on this earlier, that the press trips I've been involved in that are sustainable, or on the topic of sustainable, focused on only sustainable media. They didn't focus on the mainstream media. Norbert, I wonder if you can touch on that for a second. Should we be using the media more?
What the aim is and what we need to do is to raise the awareness of the point. And I believe one of the key issues is media, to make people aware of the situation, how important it is to travel sustainable and not to cause lots of ecological damage. And for that reason, I believe and if that is in stories, videos and what have you, so people, especially younger people, are not into reading long articles anymore. So that needs to be transported to the clients. The youngsters I believe, are quite sensitive already. So we even talk about flight shame and that sort of stuff. So they are quite sensitive, but the middle-aged people, like some of us,
Yourself.
they may need to get more information and in order to raise their sensitivity to that matter.
But I think there's a disconnect between what's happening and what the media wants. The media almost moved ahead of us. We've only 2 minutes left. Does anyone else want to jump in on the topic of the media?
I think it is important to use the media, and the media uses us too. And that combination will be great to send the right message. Very important. I think we have to make some evolution on the using of the media. You said you were trying to find people to promote those stories, to find those stories. Here in the islands, you will find lots of those stories.
Now I know.
Local farmers, now you know, so you have to get that message too on your media, and we will help that. But I'm sure it's the first time. Don't forget where you have been and who has been your,
But as I said, I am staying on, and I'm delighted to be staying on to see this evening and tomorrow real examples of this. We've just over a minute left. Maybe Mark, if I can go to you for a minute, and then Andreu will finish with you as well.
No, I don't.
And closing comments, I suppose, as well.
I completely agree about media, and obviously we need to take social media into account as well as the traditional media in order to get this sort of message across. No, I come back to, I think it's a very positive story that we have to tell. I think, we've heard examples at destination level, at hotel level, of real actions that are being taken, and whether it's Monaco or the Balearics, it's fantastic to see. But that is, as I say, we can't by any means be complacent. We have to keep pushing on this and get that happy point, that sweet spot between. Yeah, we do want numbers of people to come to Palma and to the Balearics because they create wealth, but how do we balance that? And it's finding that spot for the future that the customers and the residents and the government and we as the industry all feel that is the right place where we want to be.
Thank you, Mark. Very final comments, please.
Yo quería comentar también la importancia de los medios de comunicación, la importancia de contarlo, la importancia de que los medios en estos momentos evidentemente también están en una permanente evolución y yo creo que además si queremos conectar con los jóvenes tenemos que conectar desde el punto de vista audiovisual y desde un punto de vista audiovisual 360 grados. Yo comentaba que se abren nuevas puertas a esa realidad virtual y real en la cual los jóvenes viven permanentemente y que nosotros tenemos que estar ahí. El gobierno de España ha hecho una apuesta muy importante por el sector audiovisual, con el Hub Audiovisual de España, también aquí en Baleares, con el gobierno de Baleares y Mallorca. Queremos apostar muchísimo por el segmento audiovisual, compartir esos espacios también con los medios convencionales, pero en esas nuevas plataformas, porque ahora accedemos desde las ventanas de no solo una televisión, sino de muchas otras maneras de llegar y de otros dispositivos. Y eso es innegable y tenemos que estar ahí.
Thank you, Andreu. To follow what Maria said, I'm going to finish on a positive note. I put up a quote behind this, I'll let you read it in your own time. But I think this reinforces the value and the wonder that is travel. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, to our audience who are online, to our panellists, Mark Tanzer from ABTA, to María Frontera, President of Mallorca Hotels Association, to Norbert Fiebig, President of the German Travel Association, and of course to Andreu, Serra, the Island Minister for Tourism. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michael Collins, for moderating the last session of this day 2, and thank you, of course, Mark Tanzer, Norbert Fiebig, María Frontera, and Andreu Serra. Round of applause for them. Thank you so much. It's very interactive. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Well, this concluding session has certainly helped us to consolidate what has been said here. So thank you all for your clarity and obviously for your interesting analysis. And thanks once again to all speakers.